Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Line update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to State of State, a Penn State football show presented by FanDuel. Make every moment more. I'm Tom Hannafin. He's Justin King. Today, we're reacting to the news that broke yesterday on Sunday, October 12th, 2025. It was announced that James Franklin has been fired as the head coach of Penn State football. As of now, the interim coach is Terry Smith, who was previously the associate head coach, coached the defensive backs. We're going to get into the elements of this with Terry Smith and where the team goes from now, but we're going to spend a decent amount of time on this situation. Justin, this is very complicated, as you can imagine, as you well understand. You've played for this team in the 2000s. You worked for James Franklin as a member of his recruiting staff in the mid-2010s. And this was something that, just a few days ago after the loss to Northwestern, I was saying, how does James Franklin still have his job on Sunday? And lo and behold, Penn State is willing to pay his $56 million buyout and move on. I was personally shocked that they were willing to go to that extent. I've seen a lot of opinions on this from every different angle. I've seen some people think this is insane. I've seen a lot of Penn State football fans think that this is a long time coming and we're calling for this maybe years ago. So there's a lot of polarizing opinions on this subject. And now it's a gigantic question of where does Penn State go from here? But first things first, what was your reaction to the news of James Franklin's firing?
I was surprised. First and foremost, first I was surprised. Then second, I was kind of reading between the lines on preluding Patrick Kraft's statement about how he viewed the Penn State athletic community and as a national championship type of program. I think that those were the two-pronged initial thoughts that I had. One was surprising, and then two was like, okay, Pat Kraft is saying that Penn State is a national contender and making the job and the program as such to fork out the $50+ million to get rid of a coach in this day and age when we're dealing in NIL. So I was so I'm kind of, light in the knees in terms of just being flexible and what's going on and kind of taking it all in. But it's very interesting in turning dynamics in the program. Like we mentioned it last week on the show, this is probably one of the hardest coaching changes to make, or was going to be in the future to make, because of the success that we had. And we're going to have to take an internal look of whatever got them to 10 and 11 wins. There's going to have to be something that has to break that threshold to get over. I wasn't necessarily anticipating them firing James Franklin in order to do that, but it seemed like Pat Kraft thought that was that's the right move, and now Coach Smith is leading the charge for the rest of the season, which is is kind of hits home, and it's been a wild 48 hours. I mean, just in the Penn State ecosystem, to say the least. So keep my eyes glued to the situation and see what happens.
Yeah, I do want to get to your personal connection with this and Terry Smith in a moment here, just to process the James Franklin tenure at Penn State. 12 years, arrived here in 2014 after the Sandusky sanctions, and really did not know what he was truly inheriting. The administration at the time, I think, gave him part of the picture, and I don't think any coach that could have walked into that situation really would have comprehended how bad things were, not just in terms of the limits on scholarships and the people that you could physically put on the field, but how much work had to be done on the program itself, the infrastructure, facilities, recruiting, etc., to make this the program that I think most Penn State fans want it to be. And in the words of Pat Kraft, a national championship contender. And I think that's what everybody that is a Penn State fan, Penn State football fan, wants this team to be. But you have a 6-6 bowl record. Obviously, that Pinstripe Bowl in his first season was something that inspired a lot of hope, I think, for Penn State football fans. 2 Rose Bowl appearances, Peach Bowl appearance, Fiesta Bowl, obviously in 2017, year that you were there as a recruiting coordinator. Some real highs. Obviously, 2016, you win the Big Ten championship. The Rose Bowl victory, as I mentioned, one of the Rose Bowl appearances in 2022 against Utah. The Peach Bowl in 2023, a disappointment, but last year making it to the semifinal of the college football playoff. And we've talked about it a number of times, is that the college football playoff expanding from 4 to 12, many believe that would certainly complement a team like Penn State, be a benefit to a team like Penn State. And Penn State was arguably one drive away from playing for a national championship last year. And so much of the hope and positivity coming into this season was the roster retention, the talent you were bringing back, maybe the best coordinator tandem in the country between Andy Kotelnicki and Jim Knowles, who they grabbed from Ohio State. And it just felt like everything was set up for this year to be the year, for the first time in nearly 40 years, for Penn State football to capture a national championship. And obviously in the last 3 weeks, those hopes have been dashed drastically. James Franklin's tenure at Penn State ends 104 wins and 45 losses. The challenging thing, and I refer to this as the Bo Pelini effect, because we remember what happened at Nebraska years ago. Bo Pelini was a coach that consistently had Nebraska around 9 wins a season, and that wasn't good enough for those fans. And it's been a very long time, and they still haven't quite figured out how to get back to that level. You can look at the University of Florida, Dan Mullen, a guy who consistently got Florida to 9, 10 wins, had a pretty good record overall, still wasn't good enough. They haven't gotten back to where they want to get to. Georgia is one of those outliers in that Mark Richt was in a similar boat, wasn't getting the results that they wanted. And then you find Kirby Smart, who now many people consider to be the best head coach in the sport. Those situations don't come around very often. And the enormous pressure is now on Dr. Neely Ben-Pudi and athletic director Pat Kraft to nail this hire. Can you even begin to articulate how that process looks? I'm not looking for candidates, because immediately people are, shooting from the hip. Oh, go get Matt Rule from Nebraska because he has connections and ties to Penn State. And I understand that, but still, how do you even begin this search?
First, we got to have a true identity of what we want this football program to be. The expectations, and from there, I think you kind of identify the right personality traits in a head coach that would align to lead Penn State. But I think first has to be true. We have to be clear about the identity and the alignment that we want from here on out. This is something that I think has been spoken over the past 5 years, whether it's James saying, hey, we have alignment with Pat Kraft and the new president versus when Sandy was there. And, it's one thing about how you feel in the situation, and he was winning, right? Like at the end of the day, when he was winning is why he got the new contract, and there wasn't alignment. He was facing things coming out of sanctions, but he had success winning. This time we were screaming about alignment and everything being great. This is the most complete team, all those different type of things. And in 3 weeks it's over. So so that I wouldn't say that they really were aligned. So so I think that whole notion that there was alignment in how Pat Kraft and the president operated with it, where James was before, I think that has to be reevaluated in the sense of okay, what head coach needs to fit within the alignment of what Pat Kraft and the president are doing, whether it's the change from Nike to Adidas and those bold moves that transition out of the traditional Penn State or whatever that thing is, to really putting your foot forward and being hey, we're going to be an athletic powerhouse and we're putting our best foot forward. We're going to hire the most expensive defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, and we're going to attack it like this. I don't know if maybe it's clear that James didn't align with that philosophy in it all the way down, because to go, in 3 weeks, having a success over a 12-year tenure to in 3 weeks kind of losing your job. Granted, from an administrator standpoint, this is the hardest coaching change to make, from very good to try to get over the hump to great or championship. It happens. We did it with Mark Jackson with the Warriors, and he bring in Steve Kerr, and then they want to run but they were winning. They rebuilt it. There's builders and then there's winners, right? So and I think sometimes we see the delta of a builder, and we appreciate it. We love it. We see that we were starting with 4 wins. Now we got 10 and we keep having the success. But then there's a difference between a builder that gets to a point and then someone that is a winner that gets us over. And so if that's what Pat Kraft and the president are saying, is that we're looking for a winner or someone that's going to kind of lead this thing into championship territory, then they have to be extremely clear about what that looks like from a holistic standpoint, whether it's the type of athletes you bring in, the type of approach that you have from the donors, the type of support that you have from the fans, the expectations all across the board. And I think they got the right guy in Terry Smith as the interim head coach. It would be interesting to see what he does with these last 6 weeks to be able to throw his name in the hat to stay in that position. But they're tasked with really finding that true alignment, because I think we've been lied to about whether it was the roster talent and the alignment previously to where we're at now. So time will tell again.
A couple questions for you, because you mentioned Adidas, and it is a rumor out there. I don't know if I put too much stock in it. According to Pittsburgh Sports Now, Mike Asti is reporting apparently Adidas played a huge role in Franklin's firing, posting on social media, quote, "I've been told that Adidas drove the James Franklin firing and are why it happened today. They committed to pay most or all of the money. They also wanted a new coach before recent losses, but they made it hard for anyone at Penn State to argue." And there's also the point that's been raised that potentially within the Adidas deal, there was a $500,000 allotment for AD Pat Kraft. That has been refuted, I believe, by Penn State, because that is a typical thing within these apparel deals. To my understanding, is that that's not $500,000 that goes to Pat Kraft. It's something that gets dispersed throughout the athletic department. So do you put any stock in that rumor about Adidas or any of the things I just mentioned about Kraft?
You put a little stock in anything, right? I mean, the way that the relationships happen and interpersonal relationships, whether it's with executives and administrators, like those things are real. So I don't want to just dismiss it like it's complete BS. I don't know if it applies to this situation. In the standpoint of like them having a cause to push James out. I mean, he's had success. You know what I mean? You can put the tinfoil hat on and start doing all this stuff like, oh, Adidas is connected here and they were cool here and they want this coach in to be an Adidas rep. Man, everybody wants to win at the end of the day. So like we can search for ghosts, but 3 bad losses and a history of 11 years of kind of, the average or the median of what it produces. I mean, I don't think you need Adidas to make that call. I think this is a Pat Kraft Penn State move. I think the Adidas deal might give them some leverage or cash to make the hit a little less, substantial. But other than that.
State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. State of State, a Penn State football show, is presented by Delete Me. Delete Me makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. Data brokers make a profit off your data. Your data is a commodity. Anyone on the web can buy your private details. This can lead to identity theft, phishing attempts, and harassment. But now you can protect your privacy with Delete Me. What do data brokers do? Your name, contact info, social security number, home address, even information about your family members could all be compiled by data brokers and sold online. I understand what it means to have an active and online presence, so privacy is extremely important to me. Have you ever been a victim of identity theft, harassment, doxing? If you haven't, you probably know someone who has. Delete Me can help. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me, now at a special discount for our listeners and viewers. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/pro and use the promo code PRO at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/pro and enter code PRO at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/pro, code PRO. Delete Me. Your personal data is yours again.
The search for a new head coach is going to be a challenge, whether that's something they promote from within, to your point about Terry Smith or any other member of this coaching staff at this point in time. This is still something, I know we talk so much about the business of football, and I personally, I feel bad a couple days ago calling for his job, but from a business standpoint, it's a reasonable decision. From a personal standpoint, there's a lot of lives that have been affected in the blink of an eye because of this. And I don't think that's something a lot of people from the outside looking in comprehend, is that there are people working on this staff that have nothing to do with coaching an athlete that are worried about their job today. And that's a heartbreaking situation for a lot of people. Now, no one's heart should really break for James Franklin, who will be collecting north of $600,000 per month between now and 2031. But this is still a situation where his family has to be devastated. He has to be devastated. You can even hear it in his voice and the way that he spoke after the Northwestern losses, that he didn't say he was committed to Penn State. He said he was committed to the guys in the locker room. And he has consistently been someone who has had the faith and loyalty of his players. He's been loyal to his players. I'll say this, in an era where there is scandal, turnover, all these sorts of things, and especially what Penn State dealt with, never heard a cross word about James Franklin as a human being and the way he ran his program. The concept of success with honor was something he truly believed. I believed when he talked about making this a transformational program as opposed to a transactional program. Some people might look at that as a limitation that this team is going to have to potentially overcome. So you could see Penn State football feel different in the future. But we just have to wait and see on this whole situation. In terms of what happens now moving forward, the transfer portal opens up. So I'm curious to see if there is an exodus. I am curious to see what names pop up in the coaching search. I think also you have to consider, what does the rest of the season look like, just from a micro standpoint. Drew Aller injures his ankle against Northwestern. It's announced immediately after the game by James Franklin that Drew Aller is done for the season. And whether that's true or not from a medical standpoint, I think it's the most sensible thing for Drew Aller, considering what he's attempting to do in the National Football League. Terry Smith taking over as the interim head coach. He is your stepfather. So there's a very personal element of this for you. Can you shed any light on what the last 48 hours have looked like for you and your family?
I mean, 48, I think the 48 goes into the loss, right? I think that was already tough. I think a lot of things happened yesterday when administration meets and kind of taps the next guy up. And I think that's all that happened yesterday, was in that transition. I'm not necessarily there in Penn State, but I know it was, pretty much of a whirlwind getting situated and, getting into the head coach spot. I mean, they got the press conference coming up here today. So a lot of prepping and getting caught up into that head coaching role, right? It's like being thrusted into the presidency if something happens, and, you got to probably getting caught up right now and making any assessments that he has made from his cornerbacks and associate head coach position, come in and try to make those adjustments as needed to have a different outcome these next 6 weeks.
We're biased here, but just someone from the outside looking in to who Terry Smith is, all we have ever heard about Terry Smith is that, one, he is a damn good human being. He has been a consistent confidant for James Franklin for the majority of Franklin's tenure here at Penn State, former team captain for the Nittany Lions. He's considered one of the best position coaches in America. He's considered one of the best recruiters in America. Jim Knowles has been on the record that he doesn't believe there's any better position coach in college football at this point in time. So in terms of who you could hope for to be that interim head coach, if that's all it is, Terry Smith is absolutely the choice. There's a reason he was already the associate head coach of Penn State football. But now you have to look at keeping this season together. And what does the rest of the season look like going into this weekend? Because you have to play this weekend, this Saturday night at Kinnick at night at Iowa. Penn State, according to FanDuel right now, is the underdog going into that game. Iowa's favored by 2.5, according to FanDuel going into that game. You get a bye week, and then you have to go to Ohio State. And then you have to play Indiana. Then you get Michigan State. Then you get Nebraska, and then you end with Rutgers. That is a very challenging stretch. I'm not going to start getting into projecting wins and losses, but the very real situation is Terry Smith and the rest of the staff trying to figure out, one, how do we keep this team together? Two, how do we keep this team in-house? Roster retention now becomes a real problem. And three, you got a new starting quarterback. And whether that's Ethan Grunkemeyer or Jackson Smolik, I would be leaning towards assuming it's going to be Ethan Grunkemeyer. But this is an extremely challenging situation. So how do you handle this, in your opinion?
I would argue that roster retention isn't the most important thing anymore. To be completely honest, I would argue that painting a picture of what the future looks like to entice future recruits to want to come back to Penn State is what needs to be the key, right? When we talk about building for the future, I think we have to assume that this is somewhat of a dead season, but you have to fight to show that you're not tanking for a number one pick or anything, because you have to still fight and win, but you have to find the players on this team that can build in the future at the end of the day. Because it's like, I mean, whether it's the money, you got to chalk it up to dead money. If the team is going to, if the university is going to give up $50 million to get rid of the head coach, we might have to start looking at some of the players and the dead money that we have paid them to have move on and get the players ready for tomorrow, and get those players that are ready for tomorrow to go into the equity of the recruiting of the players to say, like, look what we're doing with our talents. I think that's where some of the hiccups have gone from in the recruiting spaces, like the players not being able to see themselves in a playmaking space or in the producing at Penn State based on what the product they were putting on the field. So I think that needs to be emphasis moving forward, because I mean, not to take it back 20 years, but when me and Derek came in as top recruits, one thing that propelled those next classes where we kind of sparked was that it was young talent that was catapulting the team. So where recruits can envision themselves being there. Right now, I don't know if recruits can envision themselves stepping in, because we've had a lot of success recruiting, but those guys have not been able to get on the field and make any impact. And I think that goes a long way from a former 5-star, from a recruiting coordinator, someone that wants to play or have those type of players that want to play this brand of football. I think painting that picture for what the future is and solidifying this ending of the season should be the number one priority on Coach Smith's next 3-month schedule per se. So
yeah, to that point, Khalil Taylor has decommitted from Penn State. Kamon Spell, who was supposed to be the headliner for the class of 2020-27, has decommitted as well. So you have to stop the bleeding on that front. Roster retention from what you have now, you do have a veteran-heavy roster, so there's a lot of guys who are already on this team that were going to go to the National Football League. But now it's a question of, like, how do you rally these guys? I have to correct myself. The spread, according to FanDuel right now, going into this weekend, is 3.5 in favor of the Iowa Hawkeyes. So for those of you that are going to be paying close attention to that game, we are going to see what Terry Smith has to say later on today. We're recording this before that has happened. Later on this week, we will have a preview of Penn State versus Iowa. Obviously, the entire landscape of Penn State football has changed, and it would take us, Justin, I don't know, hours on a podcast to really sift through all of James Franklin's tenure at Penn State. I will say this, and that I felt it was the time for James Franklin to go, and it was time for a change. But this is still bittersweet. This is still a program that got very accustomed to longevity with head coaches. Joe Paterno, obviously the changeover that occurred to Tom Bradley and then Bill O'Brien, and then 12 years with James Franklin. That steady presence is something that Penn State values. So now it's a question of trying to find that next person to lead this program. I feel badly for James Franklin, the human being, because this has got to be an extremely difficult situation for him and his family, and it's inevitably an extremely toxic environment right now in State College, Pennsylvania, for him and his family. Just kids just trying to be kids, that sort of situation. So, but at the same time, from a business standpoint, Penn State had to move on. So I'm not sure how you feel on the subject.
Nope, that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's the business, right? And I hate to just, bottom line it to the business, but that's exactly what it is. And I mean, wish him the best. I mean, I have nothing but respect for Coach Franklin. He gave me my first job in college sports. Always respectable. Somebody that, I mean, taught me a lot of ins and outs of this game. A lot of respect for how he builds programs, how he runs organization, and just the respect of a coach and what it takes and what he's done at Penn State. So from me to him, thank you for your service here at Penn State, and wish him nothing but the best, because he'll find another job and rebuild another program as well.
I feel likewise. Thank you all for joining us here. We'll have a preview of Penn State versus Iowa later on this week. We'll continue to react to all the news that comes out of this week. Terry Smith's press conferences, I imagine there will be multiple this week. Anything from Pat Kraft, we'll keep an eye on it as best we can here on State of State, a Penn State football show presented by FanDuel.
Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel for just 99 cents a month. You can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by FanDuel.